Good morning, everyone. Jim Laird here from Largo, Florida. Hope you're all doing well today. It's a little overcast. I'm hoping it doesn't rain. So if I have to sprint for cover here, it's because it started raining. But I'm hoping to stay out here in the direct sun and not have to be underneath the awning. So we have our sale that ends at the end of October, or the end of September. It ends the beginning of October on our fundamentals of wellness with coaching. So get in on that. If you get the first month at 50% off, get in, check it out. We have weekly coaching calls, and then we have 2 additional calls. So we got 6 coaching calls a month, essentially, once you get into the course, and constantly adding new chapters, new sub, I guess you would call it little mini courses within the course, based on what you want. We're doing one on blood pressure right now. We're actually, right after this is over, we're getting on and doing a webinar on blood pressure that we're going to make part of the mini course. And you can watch these webinars that we do every week. We're going to do a different webinar every week. Part of the course, you'll be able to sign in through StreamYard. And the only way to get access to that is through our email list. So it's too late to get on this one. But if you want to get on the next one, go down to the description below, go to Stillman Wellness. When you go to the website, the pop-up will come up. When the pop-up comes up, put your email list in there. Be totally transparent. You're going to go through an email sequence where you're going to get a sales emails for the fundamentals of wellness. And then once you get through that, I think it's like 5 or 6 days, then you're going to get, like, we generally send out 3 to 4 emails a week. But Monday night and Wednesday night, you will get the email to the link to our weekly StreamYard, kind of as a bonus for being on our email list. Good morning, Dr. Stillman. How are you?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Jim.
I was watching a guy who's an expert on, like, statistics, and he was, I'm not a big fan of marathons. I mean, if you love them, great. Interesting. He said it's not because of thoughts that people get hospital quickly. That's typically raised the death, particularly in old population. So I thought it was very interesting. So people, if you need but hey, but big doors, little things do often matter, and it really comes from experience originally with actually this starts way back in my wrestling career, where my wrestling coach was very adamant in technique, because I would basically use strength to try and overpower people, and he would remember that. And then it as my career progressed and I got against bigger and stronger people, it really made a huge difference. Like, technique was a massive difference. So that I was kind of exposed to this principle early on. And same with football. Like, you can be big and strong, but if you can't get in the right position on the field, it's really going to inhibit your ability to block. So I'd been in a car accident. It was around 2009. I was having problems coming back from this car accident. So I went up and seen Bill Hartman. Bill's this really, really smart guy. If you ever go look at his stuff, he's super smart, wealth of knowledge. And he looked at me like, well, driving in the car. And for years, and back issues never really back. And if I do get it back to it immediately, so implementing this where I would give people 1 or 2 simple things. And we see this all the time in the coaching practice. We'll tell people about things and things to do, and then they'll be like, well, I'm not seeing any progress. And you're like, are you actually doing what I told you? And they're like, no, not really. And the story where this really comes out is there's a lady I saw this past weekend who has been having some headache issues, and she'd been doing all sorts of different things to try and mitigate these issues. And I gave her one drill to do, and her big issue is she couldn't get air into her upper chest, and she's very compressed, and her pelvis was dumped forward. And a lot of the things she was doing actually was making her problem worse. So I gave her one simple thing doing all day, my neck. And so that just goes to show you, if you do the right thing, and I think this carries over into something simple like water too. Like if you're constantly drinking tap water that has birth control and fluoride in it, the long-term side effects is that something simple as switching to spring water over time can have massive ramifications downstream. So there's my little intro. Are you there, doctor?
I'm here. It's just that you were cutting in and out so much that I had trouble tracking. And so I was looking at our social media to see if we were actually, and it's amazing. It comes through clearly from what I can tell on YouTube and Twitter.
Yes.
So
there's been many times when
I know what you spent the last 4 minutes talking about, but I do know what you spent the last 4 minutes talking about, because we talk about it all the time. And the title says it all, right? Small hinges or little hinges swing big doors. And people are surprised by that. And it's almost like they want to make it harder than it is, right?
Yes.
They want to make it complicated. I had this mentor. His name was Nick Gonzalez. He was a doctor. He only treated terminal cancer patients with integrative and natural methods. And he used to say medical school is where they take simple things and make them complicated, and they take complicated things and they make them incomprehensible. Right. And I think it was Einstein who said, if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you don't understand it well enough. And we try to do our best to take complicated things and make them simple, and take incomprehensible things and make them only merely complicated. But people give us so much resistance and pushback on that. And that's partly, to be honest with people, one of the reasons why, if you go into the blog, blogs and podcasts and the health and wellness, I call it the health and wellness info space, because a former mentor of mine used to call it that. I think it's you probably know what that is if you're listening to this, even if it's a novel term. If you go out there, you're going to see people who are giving you these very complicated, very in-depth, very, I'll just say sometimes extreme methods to achieve wellness. And a lot of what they're doing is making it complicated because people want that. And it's funny, I talked to somebody recently about this who lamented the fact that people expect to get their health and wellness information for free. And they'll only really spend money on products, and only the super wealthy will put their money into services. And I got to be honest with you, from my experience taking care of high net worth people, many of them are doing it for the wrong reasons. They want to have something to brag about. The doctor that they go to who's very expensive becomes, it's another bragging or talking point. Look at my Lambo. Look at me. I have my doctor's cell phone number in my cell phone. I can call him anytime, day or night, and have him come visit me or whatever. And I got to be honest with people. It's very important for you to get the message. Being healthy and well does not have to be complicated. At the fundamental level, it's very simple. And we help people get there, and we help cut through all the noise and confusion. And we'll have people who come to work with us who they've tried all the fancy things. They've tried all the complicated protocols, and they've used all the fancy gadgets and gizmos and whatever. And sometimes the challenge for us is figuring out what they're doing wrong that's fundamental, that isn't necessarily obvious. But that's what we do. Day in and day out on these coaching calls, we're finding that problem for people and helping them understand why it might be the problem and what to do about it. And a lot of that comes back to trying to get them to stop focusing on, so to speak, the door and looking at the hinges, right? What's going on with the hinges? Because if you take a door that's rusted shut and you put some WD-40 on it and you knock some of that rust off of those hinges, all of a sudden your whole life gets a lot easier. And that's what we help people to do. What are the hinges? How do we fix them? And how do we, get the door swinging smoothly again on them? It's part of why we focus so much on hormones and neurotransmitters and things that help people to optimize those levels, and then the circadian rhythms of those biomolecules, because hormones are small hinges. They swing the doors of physiology in a very powerful direction. And And it's part of why, you will see so many people out there talking about hormones, and yet so many of them don't get the fundamentals right. And so they end up using hormones either therapeutically, or they're talking about hormone balancing or this or that or whatever. And they make it complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be very simple.
Yeah, absolutely. And all these little habits, they compound over time, right?
They
And
do.
a lot of people, they just don't, they think that a lot of the people that come to us are highly driven, and they're looking for like
90%. You think it's
hard
90%?
yeah, it's probably 90%. They're looking for hard work, or they're looking for this, like, you know, uh, this thing that they have to do that's going to be magical. And what they don't understand is it's these little things throughout the day, taking 10 minutes to go sit in nature and breathing calmly through your nose, closing your mouth, breathing through your nose.
Yeah.
I used to laugh at breathing. Like when I first was exposed to this, I thought it was such a joke. But then when you think about it, how you breathe thousands of times, say you have a respiratory rate that's like 18 or 19 versus 11, right?
Per minute.
11 per minute, right? So
60
think
minutes
about
in an hour, 24
right.
hours in a day.
So if you have a respiratory rate that's constantly towards 20 over the course of a whole year, that's a lot more breath. That's a lot more oxidative stress. That's a lot more wear and tear on your system. So if you can learn how to shut that high respiratory rate off and gear down, so you're breathing less, you're burning less fuel, so to speak, and you're not have your body in this high rev state where you're in a high stress state all the time, your body is going to be in a better place. You're going to have more mineral resources. You're going to have more hormone resources. You're going to have a bigger bandwidth to push on, because when you're revving at a high RPM all the time, and if you're driving a car and you're near a red line, you don't have anywhere else to go. But if you're driving at 2000 RPM, you've got the whole power band ahead of you. So a lot of what we do is getting people, and it takes people a long time. Like when we do our calls, it's like, are you doing this? Are you doing that? Well, I haven't been consistent, or I did it once and it didn't work. A lot of this stuff takes consistency over time, particularly when we're looking to like make a change to the shape of the axial skeleton, or a lot of these patterns are so ingrained because that's the only strategy you've had. It takes time for the brain to be like, oh, there's a different way to do this. This isn't the only strategy I have. And you have to be consistent with it. And a lot of the times the exercises that people are given, one, don't really take into account, they look at muscles instead of position, because very rarely have I ever experienced a muscle actually being weak. Most of the time it's the muscle is not in the right position for it to do what it's supposed to do. So people don't take into account that. It's like if I take you out in the parking lot and we put a van in a Walmart parking lot and we put it in neutral, and I tell you to push that van in the parking lot standing straight up.
Yeah.
Are you weak? No. But if I let you crouch down and get lower and put your body in a better position so you have leverage, all of a sudden you can push that van at a pretty good clip because you're in the right position. A lot of that happens with, the glutes or the shoulder. The shoulder is not in a position that allows the musculature to work in the way it's supposed to. And so people will think they need to strengthen a muscle when they actually need to change the position that they're in so that the muscles can do what they're supposed to do. And so a lot of times people don't understand that perspective. And a lot of times when I work with people, it's just a matter of giving them a different exercise variation that allows them to line the structure up and get their body moving in the way it's supposed to, or, not necessarily supposed to, but that's more ideal for biomechanic efficiency. And things just all of a sudden turn on automatically, as opposed to, I'm going to do this specific, to activate my glute med. If your hips are in the right position, that glute med is going to do its job. If the hips are not in the right position, that glute med can't do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
So,
and we see the same thing with supplements, meal timing, everything, right?
Right.
A great meal eaten in the middle of the night is not a great meal. It is a circadian catastrophe. And that's one thing that a lot of people get wrong, right? It's not necessarily bad ipso facto to be on social media. You don't have to completely kick the habit. But if you're scrolling through Instagram, Twitter, any of these social media platforms on your phone at night, you're going to wreck your sleep. You're going to have disrupted circadian rhythms. You're going to have poor sleep quality. All kinds of problems go away when we get people to wear blue blockers and put their phone down and on airplane mode at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. It's two of the most powerful habits we give people.
To steal another thing from Bill Hartman, and I steal a lot of things from Bill, but I always give him credit. It's all about trade-offs, and we're really trade-off managers, right? If you're going to be a night shift worker, there's going to be certain things that you're going to pay a price for, and one of those is you're not going to live as long. Like that's just reality. But if you choose to do that, if you have to do that, then, for example, the things we could do to offset some of that is making sure that your diet's really in order, making sure the days you're not working, your sleep is dialed in as much as possible, making sure that you're not training really, really hard on the days you work nights, things along those lines. But letting people know, like, look, when people come to me, they're vegan or vegetarian, I'm like, your results are going to be limited. You can take supplements, you can do these things. If you're going to work night shift, or if you're going to drink excessive amounts of alcohol, there's only so much you can do. So if it's more like, we had a lady join our fat loss program. She's like, I want a fat loss program. I want you to write it for me. I drink generally 4 to 6 glasses of wine a night. And I was like, you're probably not going to get very good results. And she's like, well, I refuse to give that up. And I'm just like, well, then the consequences of that are probably you're not going to sleep well. And it's going to be very difficult for you to lose body fat.
Yeah.
And I was completely honest with her, and she decided not to take the course.
Because they let those people fire themselves, or we fire them.
Right. And so it's like, okay, if you choose to, to be that way, where I'm not going to eat this, or I'm not going to eat that, I can only eat this, or, you limit yourself and you put yourself in a box.
It's like asking us to put out a house fire when you're in the kitchen playing with matches around a stove that's got the gas turned up to high and the pilot light's not on.
Right. And
you're and the other thing is that actually can create real blowback on us. Somebody gets a bad outcome because they were being irresponsible, and they say, well, it's Dr. Stillman and Jim Laird's fault. No, it's not. We're not interested in working with people who are not willing to do what it takes to achieve their goals,
or at least have an open mind. At least
have an open mind and have a conversation about it.
Be flexible in what they're doing. I mean, there's certain situations,
and also be flexible about what the goal is.
Right. Correct.
We've had so many people come to us with unrealistic goals, and we say, look, that goal is unrealistic, and here's why. Yeah. And they often kick back and push back and say, well, that's what I want. Is there any way we can sort of get there? And we say, because here's the thing, and this is what a lot of people don't realize, is if you are willing to get into the world of performance enhancing drugs, and if you're willing to go to extreme lengths with things like, biohacking or whatever you want to call it, you can do some pretty crazy stuff.
But it's not free. There's no free lunch.
There's no free lunch. There's consequences. Right. You get to pay for it. You can pay for it with time. You can pay for it with money. Sometimes you pay for it with unavoidable health consequences, but you're going to pay for it. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to pretend that you're not going to pay for it. And a lot of people out there in this space don't talk about the trade-offs. They just talk about the upside. They don't talk about the harsh realities of life. And they're not coaching people. They're just selling stuff.
Yeah. Well, like yesterday, we had a conversation with an awesome young man that we're both friends with, and he's been wanting to gain weight, and he's been, upping his calories, and his body just doesn't like it, and it's like, look, dude, like you're just, you're not built to carry around a large amount of muscle. Your body doesn't like the fact that you're eating a lot more calories. It's showing you some resistance. So you might just need to get to accept the fact. It's just like me. I'm never going to play in the NBA. Like unless I buy an NBA team, and if I played, it would really suck. Right.
You would drag your team down.
Oh, dude. Well, unless they changed the rules in the NBA and made it like full contact NBA, like you could like hit people and like take people's legs out and stuff, I'd have a chance. But, it's funny. Like I had a girl who was 5'2" who wanted to be a Division I soccer goalie. And I told her, I said, look, I took a girl that was like 5'11" and stood her, and she's like, well, if I get my vertical jump higher, I'm like, okay. So she's like, I need to put 10 inches on my vertical. So I put a 10-inch box and I had her stand on it. And, I had her basically standing next to this girl in the squat rack, and the 5'11" girl could put her hand on the squat rack without even jumping at the top of the squat rack, like where you do pull-ups. She had a long wingspan, super tall. This girl even on the 10-inch box, when she jumped, she still couldn't touch the top of the squat rack. And I told her, look, if you really are set on playing D1, you need to change positions now while you still have time, because women generally tend to stop growing at 14. This girl was 16. I was like, you need to change to a different position. And then you need to be a little more realistic and maybe think about playing a Division III school or something like that. Her parents did not like that. And they went to another trainer who said, well, I can get you there. We'll just work on your vertical. And, obviously that didn't end well for her, but I refused to buy into the fact that, like, I'm sorry, there are exceptions, like in baseball pitching and things like that, but there's no Division I school in the country that's going to take a 5'2" goalie, because
Yeah.
people are just going to kick it over her head from midfield, right?
Right.
In high school, they can't do that because most girls don't have enough power to kick it from midfield. So she could get away, and the team she was playing for was really good up front. So she never really saw much action in the nets. So, but I refuse to, like, it's kind of like, if I had a guy who was like 5'6" and weighed 160 pounds and his lifelong goal was to be a sumo wrestler, it's like, what, dude, I'm sorry, like, that's not going to work. Like, you're going to end up killing yourself in the process. Right.
Right. No, and for those of you who are thinking, well, I'm not a high performance athlete. I'm a CEO, I'm an executive, I'm a highly paid professional, I'm this, I'm that. You still have performance goals that you come to us with that are somewhat unrealistic. Like, hey, I know I live in a totally artificial environment. I need another 10 years of really highly productive work. I want to do it all natural. And how do I do that? And, if somebody comes to me in that position, some of my questions are things like, do you want to have children, more children, if you've already got some? Why? Because one of the only ways to help, particularly men who are in a position where they have to be at a higher level of performance, but their health is waning because they live a very artificial life. They're in a highly dense urban environment. They don't have access to the freshest, healthiest food. Because let's face it, even if you're eating organic food in this country, the organic food movement has really been co-opted by big agriculture or the big food industry, right? And so it's not really that organic. It's organic light. So we often see people in this position and their testosterone is low and they say, well, I need more gas in the tank. What do we do to get there? One of the only things you can do in that situation to really help boost their performance and improve their metabolism is to give them more testosterone. And I'll have people say, well, look, I just want to do it naturally. And I say, look, I respect that. I get it. But you're asking me to, there's not really another good way for me to do this. Can we do things with nutrition, and can we dump supplements into the system and try and balance them and all that kind of stuff? Yes. But we just, people are not realistic about what their physiology can accomplish. And that's 90% of, I think, what we do. We help them understand what those limits are and then how to get the most out of what they are, because each of you is different. I mean, so many of you have got unique, for example, receptor polymorphisms in your neurotransmitters. You take somebody who's got a DRD2 dopamine receptor mutation, or a DRD4 dopamine receptor mutation. That person has a radically different wiring in their brain. They're different behavior, different bad habits, different compensatory strategies, different desires in life. They're wired differently. You can't teach that person, coach that person, or treat that person as a physician the same way as you're treating somebody who has, for example, some kind of genetic predisposition to like a higher serotonin level, which can be associated with some traits for things like OCD. And I don't always get to that with genetic testing, but I do look at the personality and adjust the approach accordingly. So do you. We've talked about that a lot.
Well, and with social media, people tend to look at outliers. People like Goggins, people like,
right,
like Dennis Rodman. I use him as an example all the time. Party all night and then still go play at a high level in the NBA. And then also people will be like, well, I did this for 3 months. Your body can handle some serious abuse, but then eventually the body's like, well, I can't do this anymore. And even if you give someone testosterone,
your underlying physiology falls apart.
You have to basically, when you give someone testosterone, you have to be very open with them. Like, look, the lifestyle that got you to the low testosterone, if we give you supplemental testosterone or supplemental thyroid and you continue to do the things that got you in this situation in the first place. If you don't make some effort for self-care, you're going to end up in big trouble. Right. So, educating these people like, okay, we'll give you testosterone, but you have to change your lifestyle for this to be sustainable. So we don't have to keep jacking your testosterone up. And then there comes a point where the testosterone actually becomes a negative at a certain rate. Right. So a lot of people will be just like, well, I'm just going to take more testosterone. And I fell into that, when I first got in trouble because I wasn't sleeping enough. I had no self-care. And the testosterone and the stimulants allowed me to do that for a certain period of time. And then eventually, the repo man showed up at my house and said, dude, like, it's time to pay.
The physiologic medical repo man.
The medical repo. And we deal with this with moms too. Moms that are really busy, they have a career, they have kids and they're running around with a chicken with their head cut off. And then they expect to look a certain way or be able to go to the gym and train really hard. And it's like, look, like, there's trade-offs here. Like, you can't rob Peter to pay Paul forever. Right. So you're going to have to take some time and make some choices that are going to allow you to have more reserves so you can actually maybe train hard or do whatever you need to do. Right. So that's basically, what we spend a lot of time doing is teaching people about trade-offs and about, hey, like, think about what you're doing and why are you doing it? And a lot of people don't understand, like, I get into this conversation a lot with people about being lean, like being super lean, like being really, really lean is a lot of hard work for certain people, right? Do you want to put all that effort to go from, like, if you're a guy and you're like 10, 11% and you want to be 8 or 6,
body fat, that is.
Yeah. And if you're a woman and if you're 18% and you want to be 13 or 14%, that's a totally, like, different lifestyle that you're going to be missing out on a lot of other things. So do you want to pay the price of that? Is it worth it to you? So you have to figure out, what people want to do. And a lot of times people, and a lot of people will think like leaner is healthier. And there comes a point where being super lean all the time becomes almost a liability. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
on that note, I think that's enough for today. Thanks everyone for joining us. Make sure that you get outside. We are going to be doing a free webinar at 10 o'clock. If you haven't signed up for our email list, I think you're too late for today's webinar, but
you are.
Sign up and you will get the invite for next week's. What's today?
Correct.
Today's blood pressure secrets, right?
Yeah, blood pressure secrets, which is going to be part of our fundamentals of wellness. So if you want to watch it, you can sign up for the fundamentals of wellness, which is discounted.
Correct.
In the link below, and you're going to get all these courses, plus you're going to get weekly coaching, and we'll be able to get you in the right direction. So
that's right.
Have yourself a great day.